There was a time when an entire room could light up the moment the beat dropped. Hands in the air, smiles everywhere. And one man behind a plastic nose made the whole world dance without asking why. Long before hip hop became a global business, before brand deals and streaming numbers, there was a sound that felt playful, fearless, and free. That sound came from Digital Underground. And at the center of it all was Shock G, the man the world also knew as Humpty Hump. He wasn't just a rapper with a funny character. He was a trained musician, a producer, a creator who blended funk, jazz, blues, and street poetry into something the mainstream had never seen before. He helped hip hop cross over. He helped open doors, and without him, the world might never have met Tupac Shakur. But for all the laughter he gave the audience, Shock G carried a much heavier story behind the scenes. A story of pressure, of addiction, of a man who gave everything to the culture and quietly lost himself in the process. So how does someone who once made millions of people dance end up alone in a hotel room? How does joy turn into silence? This is the story of Shock G, not just how he lived, but how it all fell apart. Before the stage lights, before the costumes and laughter, there was a quiet beginning. Shock G was born Gregory Jacobs on the 25th of August, 1963, in Brooklyn, New York. Music entered his life early, not as ambition, but as comfort. As a child, he would sing Motown records around family and friends, mimicking the voices he heard on the radio. Even then, performance came naturally. It wasn't forced. It was play. His family moved often. Upstate New York came first, then Tampa, Florida. Tampa was different, slower, hotter, more open. He lived near rivers and lakes, spent days outside, catching snakes and alligators with his bare hands. Country life shaped him as much as the city ever did. Around the age of 11, music stopped being a hobby and became a focus. He formed his first band with neighborhood friends, playing drums and covering artists like Sly and the Family Stone and Herbie Hancock. Funk wasn't just a sound, it was a language, one that spoke to rhythm, freedom, and humor. When that band ended, he formed another, then another. By his teenage years, Gregory had already learned a hard truth about music. Groups break up, dreams stall, but if the passion is real, you keep going. After his parents' divorce, he returned to New York with his mother and younger brother. There, hip-hop surrounded him. Breakdancing on cardboard, graffiti on subway cars, rappers on every corner. The culture was alive, and he wanted in. He sold his drum kit and bought turntables and a mixer. From that moment on, rhythm came through vinyl instead of sticks. At first, he called himself MC Starchild. It didn't last. Friends suggested a change, and soon, Shock G was born. He began DJing and rapping at neighborhood parties, learning how crowds moved, what made them react, what made them stay. He later returned to Tampa after his father gained custody. Hip-hop was still rare there, so Shock G helped build it from scratch. He joined a mobile DJ crew, throwing park jams and outdoor parties just like the ones he'd seen in New York. The crowds grew. So did his reputation. That momentum landed him a job as one of the youngest on-air DJs in Florida. It didn't last long. He was fired for playing a George Clinton song that was far too long for radio format. But even that setback pushed him forward. At 18, he enrolled in community college to study music theory and piano. He wanted knowledge, structure, something deeper than instinct. Eventually, Florida felt too small. Opportunities were limited. Tension with his father grew. With little money and big dreams, he packed up and headed west to California. He didn't know it yet, but that move would change hip-hop history. California changed everything. After settling in the Bay Area, Shock G took a job at a record store in Oakland. It wasn't glamorous, but it placed him exactly where music conversations happened every day. That's where he met Chop Master Jay, a DJ with deep industry connections and an ear for talent. When Chop Master Jay heard Shock G's music, he knew it wasn't ordinary. Without hesitation, he passed it along to people who could open doors. Soon, a group began to form. Early versions came and went, but the vision became clear. Shock G didn't want to copy anyone else. Public Enemy already owned political rage. De La Soul had the alternative lane. What he wanted was funk, humor, performance, something rooted in George Clinton, Parliament, and Bootsy Collins, but filtered through hip-hop. That vision became Digital Underground. The name reflected both sides of the movement. Digital, for the new machines and technology shaping modern music. Underground, for the street energy and independence they refused to lose. From the beginning, Shock G wasn't just the front man. He was the producer, the arranger, the architect behind the sound. Their early tracks, like Underwater Rhymes and Your Life's a Cartoon, started circulating in the Bay Area, creating a buzz strong enough to attract major labels. Virgin, Warner Brothers, and Tommy Boy Records all showed interest. But Tommy Boy wanted to see more than studio recordings. They wanted a live performance. When Digital Underground hit the stage, the response was immediate. The energy was chaotic, theatrical, unpredictable. Tommy Boy signed them, first cautiously, then fully committed. In October 1989, their single, Do What You Like, climbed the charts, opening doors overseas and pushing the group into full touring mode. But it was the next record that changed everything. The Humpty Dance wasn't just a song. It was a moment, a character, a cultural event. Behind the exaggerated voice and the crooked nose was Shock G himself, transformed into Humpty Hump. The song exploded, reaching #1 on the rap charts and breaking into the pop world. Suddenly, Digital Underground was everywhere. Radio, television, international tours. Their debut album, Sex Packets, followed quickly and went platinum. The group recorded it in just weeks, driven by momentum and creativity. Critics laughed, danced, and listened. Audiences did the same. Shock G had achieved something rare. He made hip-hop playful without making it shallow. He crossed into the mainstream without losing originality. And while the world focused on Humpty Hump, Shock G quietly became one of the most influential producers of his era. Yet even at the peak, cracks were forming. Success moved fast, expectations grew faster, and the pressure to repeat magic began to weigh on the man behind the mask. At the height of success, everything looked effortless, but behind the scenes, nothing was. As Digital Underground grew bigger, so did the tension. Record labels began pushing for what they believed sold best. More jokes, more sex, more Humpty. Shock G wanted something else. He wanted depth, politics, reflection, music that spoke to the realities he saw around him. The disagreement with Tommy Boy Records wasn't loud at first. It was subtle. Song choices, single decisions, creative pressure. When albums didn't perform the way the label expected, support faded quickly. Eventually, Digital Underground was dropped. For Shock G, it wasn't just a business loss. It felt personal. Around the same time, he was watching someone he loved move faster than he ever had. Tupac Shakur was rising, hungry, restless, brilliant. Shock G had mentored him, toured with him, protected him when he could, but Tupac wanted more. Independence, control, his own voice. Their relationship was complex, part brotherhood, part frustration, part deep respect. Then, in September 1996, Tupac was killed. The loss hit Shock G hard. In interviews, He would later describe the moment as a fracture in his life. Not just grief, but guilt, regret, anger at the forces surrounding Tupac in his final years. The industry, the violence, the pressure to perform toughness at any cost. Hip hop itself was changing. The sound that Shock G helped pioneer felt less welcome. The industry chased trends faster, louder, colder. He felt out of place in a culture he helped build. Drugs became an escape, at first casually, then frequently, then destructively. Over the years, Shock G experimented with nearly everything. What started as curiosity turned into dependency. The studio, once his sanctuary, became a place of anxiety and depression. By the early 2000s, the damage was visible. Relationships strained, money disappeared, stability faded. He stepped away from the spotlight, living with friends, trying to get sober, trying to remember who he was without the applause. There were moments of clarity, periods of health, returns to music, but recovery wasn't linear. The industry moved on, and Shock G struggled to find his place within it. The laughter that once defined his image became rare, and the man behind the character grew quieter. What the world saw as decline, Shock G experienced as exhaustion. Years of giving, years of pressure, years of being remembered for a mask rather than a mind. The fall wasn't sudden, it was slow, and it was painful. By the time the news spread, the reaction was quiet but heavy. Shock G's death didn't arrive with headlines screaming scandal. It arrived with disbelief, with long pauses, with people saying, "I didn't know he was struggling that badly." In many ways, that response reflected how America had treated him for years. Appreciated, but rarely fully understood. To the mainstream world, he was Humpty Hump. To hip hop, he was a foundation. Digital Underground helped move rap out of the margins and into everyday American life. Alongside artists like MC Hammer and Vanilla Ice, their music crossed racial and generational lines. Their songs played in clubs, on radio stations, and in living rooms far beyond traditional hip hop audiences. For many older Americans, the Humpty Dance was one of the first rap records they didn't just tolerate, but enjoyed. Internationally, the impact was just as real. Digital Underground toured overseas early, building audiences in Europe when American hip hop was still viewed as a passing trend. Their energy, humor, and musicianship translated without explanation. But perhaps Shock G's most lasting contribution wasn't what he did for himself. It was what he did for others. Without Shock G, Tupac Shakur's path may have looked very different. He didn't just give Tupac a stage. He gave him structure, discipline, and protection during his earliest, most fragile years. That mentorship shaped one of the most influential artists in American history. After Shock G passed, Oakland stepped forward. The city officially declared August 25th Digital Underground Day, honoring both his birthday and his cultural impact. It wasn't a grand parade. It was recognition, respect, and acknowledgement that history had been shaped in quiet ways. His death also reopened conversations across America about addiction, especially the deadly reality of fentanyl. Shock G's story became part of a larger warning. Talent doesn't make you immune. Success doesn't protect you. And humor doesn't mean someone isn't hurting. Around the world, fans returned to the music. They laughed again. They danced again. But this time, they listened differently. Because behind every joke, they could now hear the weight. Some lives don't end with closure. They end with echoes. Shock G spent decades giving hip-hop something rare. Joy without emptiness. Humor without ignorance. Funk without forgetting where it came from. As Humpty Hump, he made the world laugh. As the mind behind Digital Underground, he helped change how America heard rap music. And as a mentor, He helped introduce Tupac Shakur to the world. That alone would have secured his place in history. But history is rarely kind to those who give too much of themselves. Behind the characters and performances, Shock G carried weight most people never saw. Pressure from the industry, grief from loss, a constant fight to stay relevant in a culture that moves on quickly. When he died in 2021, it wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a reminder. Talent doesn't protect you from pain. Success doesn't silence addiction. And laughter can be a shield as much as it is a gift. Today, his music still plays. The Humpty dance still makes people smile. But there's a new layer now. Listeners hear the craftsmanship, the intelligence, the humanity beneath the jokes. In Oakland, a day bears his name. In hip hop, his fingerprints are everywhere. Shock G didn't chase legacy. He built it quietly, piece by piece, song by song, person by person. He gave the culture energy when it needed fun, direction when it needed funk, and space for others to grow when they needed guidance. Some stories don't end with applause. They end with understanding. If this story reminded you of someone who once made you laugh, dance, or feel seen, take a moment and remember them. Share your memory in the comments. We read every one. And if you value hip-hop stories told with respect, patience, and truth, consider subscribing. Not for noise, but for the stories that stay with you long after the music fades.